Hey there, everybody. Welcome to the Spartan Tailgate podcast, Big Ten opening week edition. I'm Chris Vanini, joined always by SpartanTailgate.com lead writer Dan Kilbridge. Dan, I know you've been having some internet issues as you have recently just moved, so just an FYI to people listening, if this craps out at some point, we may pick it up in a part 2 or something like that. Just want to get that out of the way ahead of time. Dan, how are you doing after the move?
Oh man, I mean it's just the worst possible thing in the world is moving, and it was like a 10-hour deal yesterday, and I just spent 2 hours at Art Van Furniture, and I'm just I'm just about ready to tap out at this point, but the people want their podcast, so I got to tough it out here. I got to play hurt.
And Comcast says they'll come to your house to set up the internet between now and Thanksgiving. Am I right?
Well, we were hoping for 2016, which that's fine for the worst company in the world. Truly, I'll take it.
Yeah, John Oliver's show had a bit on cable companies a while back about them being the most despised companies. Good thing.
Well, I mean, has anyone ever left Comcast going, that was nice? That was a really pleasant experience.
No, because you know what it is that these companies are almost monopolies in the sense that they don't go on other people's turf, so they can keep the prices high, they can keep the service low, and they don't interfere with each other. That's why, Time Warner is not available everywhere, Comcast isn't available everywhere. They kind of have their own region set out. It's a whole big ugly thing.
I got my favorite Comcast moment. They gave me a 13-hour window once. They told me between 8 and 9. So I got up at 7:30 in the morning. I'm waiting around. It's 8:30, nothing. 9:30, nothing. I finally call, and you have to do the whole 25-minute ordeal. And
that's why you hate hanging up, because if you hang up, it's going to be half an hour before you can get back to where you were.
Exactly. And I finally get someone. Oh no, that window was 8 a.m. to 9 p.m. Okay, that's great. But anyways, enough about Comcast. We all know they suck, and that's nothing. That's not exactly groundbreaking territory.
Yes, we've got some sports to talk about. We're recording this just after the Tigers DS to the Baltimore Orioles in an ugly finish. By the time you're listening to this, game 2 might even be over. But before we get into football, and there's certainly a lot of football to talk about, we're going to open this podcast actually by talking about hockey. Because earlier this week, MSU announced officially that Munn Ice Arena will be undergoing significant renovations over the next 12 months. These include theatrical lighting, HD video boards, LED ribbon boards, chairback seating, new concourse decor, and dressing room decor. Some of these I think are more important than others. I think the chairback seating's big. I think the LED ribbon boards are good. I don't know if they really need new video boards. I mean, those are pretty good. It's not like they have a jumbotron, and it's kind of the way the arena's set up. The jumbotron would kind of just get in the way of everything.
There's any bad sight lines there.
Yeah, I thought the boards they have work perfectly fine, but gotta upgrade the program in some forms. You have any thoughts on these additions? Munn is one of the. It's got everything you need in a college hockey arena. It's just all kind of old, and it might not be the most intimidating place with the way it's set up, nor memorable. But with the way you can have the standing room only seating, you can get big crowds in there pretty good. I think more than anything is important is winning, but facilities don't hurt, especially now that you're in the Big Ten. And Munn Ice Arena goes from one of the top arenas in the CCHA to probably on the lower end in the Big Ten when you look at what Wisconsin, Minnesota, Michigan, Ohio State, Penn State have. So I think these are some of these are enhancements that needed to happen, but more than anything is what happens on the ice, obviously. What do you think of these upgrades?
Yeah, well, I mean, like you touched on, you have to upgrade the win and loss column to get people back there. But I do think Munn's a pretty cool place, and some of those schools you mentioned in the Big Ten, I think, Ohio State plays at Value City, right?
Yeah,
Uh,
I would put that below MSU
Yeah,
in
and
terms of
exactly.
like atmosphere.
That's kind of what I'm getting at. Is you'd much rather have a Yost or a Munn than a big basketball arena like that. And it does. I don't know. I mean, there's something about Munn where if you win there, I don't think the facility. I don't think it matters as much. You're gonna pack the place anyways. Like I remember back in the mid '90s, it was the hottest ticket in town, and it was like a big deal if my dad would come home from work and say, "Oh, I scored hockey tickets tonight on a Friday afternoon or something," and it was impossible to get tickets, and they were winning, and it was great, and the arena was rocking, and those are some of my favorite sports memories growing up. Were going to games at Munn when it was these huge games, huge events, and so hopefully, Tom Anastos can get some things going because I think he's a good guy and he's smart, and we'll see if he can translate that onto the ice. I know it takes a while, but yeah, I like Munn, and I'm excited to see what it looks like.
Yeah, and you mentioned Ohio State at Value City. Wisconsin plays at the Kohl
Yeah,
Center, but they regularly get more than 10,000 people to a game.
do they really?
They pack that place pretty well. It's actually pretty impressive the setup they have there at Wisconsin. But I think college hockey attendance and interest, especially in this state, is probably almost as low as it's ever been when you could compare to the late 90s and that. And I don't think it's necessarily all on ice related. I think part of it's, the rise of some other sports and just kind of the way hockey's looked at in the state. It's not what it was 10 years ago. The Red Wings, don't sell out like they used to,
Yeah.
but
Again, that's wins and losses,
oh,
though.
it is partly, but I don't think if you had those late '90s Ron Mason teams playing now, I don't think you would have the same atmosphere and sellout streak that you had back then. I think it's just kind of it's a different just feel around where the sport is in the state. Even at Michigan, I know they've struggled in the past few years, but they were another place that they'd pack it all the time, and now
Yeah.
anybody can get hockey tickets. I think it's just I think part of it was maybe because it almost did become stale because they had been winning for so long. Um, it wasn't as novel, but obviously you mentioned analysis. That was one of the reader questions we got in today. We might as well just hit that one now from at Meyer Mark MJ. How long will
Former Lansing State Journal sports editor
Oh,
Mark
you're
Meyer,
right.
and
Good.
he was the one who hired me for my first job when I was a sophomore at Michigan State, and I'll always appreciate what he did for me back in that was 2007. And God knows why he hired me, but it's been, I really liked him, so I was glad to hear from him.
Yeah, I've talked with him before. He asks, how long will MSU stick with Tom Anastas at the helm of the hockey team?
Well,
Hashtag blame it on Rick. And it's an interesting situation because Rick Comley had cut off so many recruiting ties that Anastas has had to redevelop, and he's starting to bring in good kids, and especially in hockey when you got to get these commitments so far in advance, it does take a lot of time. And I think getting to the NCAA tournament in his first year, although that was a team stocked with seniors, I don't think Comley would have gotten them to the NCAA tournament like Anastas did. Even if MSU was the very last team in, I think they were. They still got it in. I think that was a good job of coaching by Anastas, as we saw when he had the talent there. But the last few years, they've had just absolutely nothing on offense, and it's been really, really hard to watch games. And credit to the fans, they've still been packing Munn pretty decently, despite that. They're gonna have to take a step forward this year, because Anastas has 2 years left on his contract, I believe, and they have to show some sort of improvement, because if you once again look exactly like they have the last 2 years, and Anastas is going into the final year of his contract, and it's kind of an awkward situation there when you have a coach with a 1-year deal. You don't typically see that in a lot of sports. I know you do with Mike Babcock, but especially in college sports, because then you got the whole recruiting thing where kids don't know if you'll be there or not. I think it's a big year for the hockey team to have to turn that around. Will they? They got a lot of that offense coming back, I believe, and they're going to have to step that up. But I think this is a really big. I don't think it's fair to. I know people have been upset at Anastas for a few years now. I don't think it would have been a fair move to make a change yet, but it's something that I think there's a lot of pressure on him and the team this year to show that they are actually making progress, because without Jake Hildebrand, this team could be really bad.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, it is kind of like you touched on with the recruiting. I mean, I don't follow college hockey that closely just because people don't pay to read about college hockey, but I do enjoy it, and I think that from what I understand from the people I talk to who know about college hockey, they do say that you have to have more leeway than you would a football or a basketball coach, simply because it takes longer to build toward recruiting, because you're getting these guys when they're in, 7th grade or whatever it may be, and so it's a little bit different. But I don't think he's on a hot seat necessarily. In order to do that, first of all, you have to have a lot of angry, fans. And I think overall the vibe to me seems like MSU hockey fans are at least pleased with the way they're playing, the style and the effort that they're giving. And so I think that buys him, at least another 2 years to try to right the ship, but maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, I do think that's a change from Conley. I think you see this team play a lot, just simply play a lot harder than they did in those late Conley years. It's not the best system, but I think part of the system right now is designed to win a 2-1 game, because he knows there isn't much offensive talent. I do think he has geared his system toward playing to those strengths, in fairness to him. You can't open it up if you don't have the players, because then you just open yourself up to allow a lot of goals. And after the last few years when they've had really, really bad, ugly performances where you feel like they gave up, they've come out the next game and, after an ugly loss in Michigan, they'll come back and beat Michigan at home the next day, and it's just like out of nowhere. And so I think, and it was an interesting hire, because he's a guy who didn't have any college coaching experience. He was a commissioner. It was just something totally out of the box, and I do think he's done a good job of fixing those recruiting ties, which needs to be done. But I think there is a little bit of, no, I wouldn't say hot seat, but I think they do need to show some improvement this year. So that'll wrap things up for hockey. For those of you who follow hockey, we'll try to talk a little bit about it maybe as the season goes on, and see where things go. So now we transition into football, where the Michigan State football team whooped up on Wyoming 56-14. Offensively, another tremendous performance all around. Connor Cook, 8 for 12, 2 touchdowns, rushed for a touchdown on another option play. Overall, a dominating performance. My 3 takeaways that I wrote about earlier in the week, the first thing that stuck out to me was that offense, and I included 2 screenshots of a formation that MSU used with almost everybody in the box except for one receiver out wide, but you had one receiver and 2 tight ends lined up on the outside. One play, they used it as a jet sweep to Keith Mumphrey, who ran it in for a touchdown. Another included 2 fake handoffs and a pass down the seam to Josiah Price for a touchdown. Wyoming didn't know what the heck was coming, but it seemed like, and D'Antonio credited Jim Bowman with bringing in some new ideas for that, but also credit Dave Warner too for calling them and using them correctly. I know kind of the call offensive coordinator thing can be a complicated situation to understand. But first one, I mean, offensively, what did you think of the performance?
Yeah, it was very interesting what they were doing with, and I'm glad you included those screenshots, because that gave a good look at sort of what it was. And we talked about it, almost a modified version of the wing T, where the quarterback, the receiver comes in motion, and the quarterback can give it to the receiver, give it to the running back, he can keep it and run it, or he can throw. And we saw a couple different variations of that. And that, I don't know how if you're a team like Wyoming, how you can possibly stop that when you're stretching the field so much and you have to respect that end around, and at the same time you can hit them off tackle or go over the top of the linebackers and hit a tight end with a pass. That was, something D'Antonio's kind of been hinting now for a long time. Not hinting, that's the wrong word. But he's been talking about needing to adapt and change with the times, and that's been the exact phrase he's used. And a lot of people thought that meant exclusively, have a running quarterback and a guy that can move around in the pocket. And that's true to a certain point. Obviously, you like having Damian Terry and what he can do, and Connor Cook, another rushing touchdown, but no one's going to mistake him for Michael Vick. And I think this is kind of what he was talking about. It's sort of a different thing schematically. Wow, schematically. It's again, I've been moving, so there should be like a warning before this. But yeah, so it's a little bit different there, and I think something that now Nebraska's looking at on film, and they're preparing for it. And it's going to be interesting to see. I thought everyone looked in rhythm, and things just clicked. And it's truly amazing to think about where they were even 12 months ago when things were not clicking at all on the field, and guys just looked lost. And now everyone's playing with confidence, and it is what it is. It looks like one of the best offenses in the nation right now.
Yeah, I mean, along the lines of those changing with the times, that doesn't mean, spread it out, no huddle. MSU,
No.
I still think the stat is overrated, but MSU I think, leads the nation in time of possession, and I believe they did a year ago, actually. Let me look that up right now. But it just means doing different things. And you mentioned 12 months ago, I mean, they only lost Benny Fowler from last year's team among skilled players, so you've got everybody back. It's kind of the situation the defense was in a year ago where everybody kind of knew the playbook before the season was going on. Now you've got guys who have been in the system for a long time. They're veterans, and you can open things up more and give them to them. And it's something that's difficult in college football because if you have a young team, a new team, you can't just give them the same stuff every year because it kind of changes. Yeah, MSU does lead the nation in time of possession. They were number 7 last year. So it's a stat they value. It's a stat I don't know matters all too much. But it's also been kind of weird because you got these blowout games. So, but the offense, first team offense, when they want, they've been moving down the field.
I had no idea that there was a movement going on that time of possession is irrelevant. Someone was telling me about that the other day.
For a little bit because you look at a team like Oregon.
Apparently, Rittenberg's big on that.
Oh, is
Adam
he?
Rittenberg
I don't know.
from ESPN
apparently
thinks it's irrelevant.
I know it was popular in the advanced stats group.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not trying to go all Joe Morgan here, but but to me, time of possession. Number one, I think what it does more so is just indicates a strength that is huge. I mean, if you're talking about end of the game situation, you get the ball back with 7 minutes left, you're up 3 points, and you're at your own 20. If you're a good time of possession team, that generally means you will be able to sustain a drive and maybe eat that up like we saw Michigan State do, most notably probably against Wisconsin in 2010, I think it was, in that home game where they had like the 8.5-minute drive to seal the win. And to me, I think time of possession is still really important and a good indicator of an offense's ability to control the game. And to me, looking a little bit ahead to this Nebraska game, that's huge. You want to keep Amir Abdullah off the field as long as possible. You don't want Tommy Armstrong on the field as much as possible. And I know it's, people say, well, it's just points. If you score enough points, it doesn't matter how quickly you do it. But if Michigan State, eats up clock and is shown the ability to sustain those drives, and then toward the end of the game, hold on to it longer and dictate the pace, I think that's absolutely to their advantage.
It depends. I mean, if you look at the teams last year that were also near the top of the country in time possession, you've got Florida, who was 4-8, Virginia, who won 2 games. You got MSU at 7, but like this year, Oregon is number 126 in in scoring offense, and then
Sure.
UMass is number 127. It's not. It depends who you are. Part of the reason MSU had such a good time possession last year was because they forced so many 3-and-outs on defense, and if you're able to, if maybe a team stays on the field, or maybe you're moving down the field slowly, but if it doesn't result in points, that's why something like points per drive is a kind of an advanced stat that's kind of making its way through. But we're kind of getting a little bit off track here. Anyway, but Nebraska, if you're interested, Nebraska's number 21 in time of possession. So these are two teams that have been holding on to the ball. So offensively, I think MSU's got everything rolling. I think, again, with those jet sweeps, is that they're not wasting any time running up the gut waiting for it to start working. If it ain't going great, okay, we're going to spread them out. We're going to spread the defense out wide and then hit them up the middle. And that's kind of what they did against Wyoming. It seemed like it worked because you had 4 different receivers take a jet sweep handoff against or 4 different receivers take a handoff against Wyoming. So this is something. Previously, it was pretty much just R.J. Shelton last year. If he was in the game, you knew either he was getting a handoff or they were going to fake a handoff. Now you've got Burbridge, Kings, Mumphrey, Shelton taking handoffs, and it can be anybody. I think there's just a ton of options, perhaps more options this year than MSU's ever had in terms of possibilities on offense, and I think that comes from having such a veteran defense or veteran offense. Defensively, it's an interesting game. Wyoming only had 14 points at halftime, but they were averaging 7.4 yards per play because they were getting those big plays, which have been a problem. Now, both safeties missed a tackle on a long touchdown drive by Wyoming, and from what I read, the coaches took the blame for that, which is fine, but I don't think that had a ton to do with straight up missing a tackle like they did. R.J. Williamson specifically got burned or got run over. And
he just didn't wrap up. He was there. I mean, he was there. He was in perfect position to make the play. He just didn't wrap up.
Yeah, Narduzzi said he's not concerned about the safety play. And when I heard that, the first thing I flashed back to was Izzo, when Izzo will blast a player or something for a few weeks, and then he'll just change his tune and change it to a tune of support to try to change things up and make the player feel better. That was the sense I got from it. I mean, he did put Monte Nicholson in there for some plays on first-team defense, and I think Nicholson's very first play, he got caught inside, and Wyoming bounced a run outside right by him for a decent gain. The defense shut them down in the second half, as it was pretty much a blowout by then. I think Wyoming ended up around 5 point something per play, but the big plays remain an issue, and a lot of that is coming down to the safety play.
Yep, and I think Nebraska is going to try to take advantage big time. When you look at the past couple of years, that's really the way that most teams have tried to beat this defense is just, hey, chuck it up at the safeties and maybe you get a pass interference, or the safeties in this scheme have so much responsibility that maybe you catch them in a bad spot. So I do think they're going to look to go deep with Armstrong, and you got Kenny Bell on the outside, who's an outstanding receiver. And when you have that threat of Amir Abdul in the backfield too, I mean that opens up a lot of things for him. So I don't know. I think this game will tell us all we need to know about the defense. If they hold Nebraska under 400 total yards, I think that's a good day for the defense, honestly.
The cornerbacks have drawn a lot of love and attention over the past few years, but I think what we're seeing early this season is just how important those safeties really are and how much more they have to read and react to the run game and the passing game and being in position, as opposed to being lined up against a player and adjusting from there. Even Curtis.
That's a good point, because you look at Trenton Robinson right now. He's playing on Sunday.
Yep.
He was a hell of a safety. You look at Isaiah Lewis, not with a team right now, but a terrific college safety, one of the hardest hitters I've seen. And so you're right. I mean, Darquez Denard and Johnny Adams and those guys get all the pub, but the safeties are equally as important in this scheme, and they've had some really, really good ones.
Yeah, and you look at that 2009 defense that struggled. You had Jeremy Ware and Chris L. Rucker, two guys who was Rucker drafted?
Uh,
I know Ware was drafted, and Rucker played in the
I don't
league
think he.
a little bit.
I don't believe he was drafted.
But safety that year was a struggle. But yeah,
If only Roderick Jenrette had stayed healthy and then not gotten kicked off the team, I think it could have been a good one.
Brendan Trawick, he was a safety or was he a linebacker?
I don't remember that. He wasn't. He was gone by '09.
Yeah,
I think.
but he's in the NFL now, I think, or he was.
Oh, I see. I see what you mean.
He was wherever he transferred to. I don't remember where he transferred to.
Yeah, the safeties on that team. They were going with Danny Fortner.
Oh yeah, I got someone. Someone thought I was Danny Fortner at a party once.
What?
Yeah, I don't know. They weren't paying much attention.
Apparently not. Did you just go with it?
Oh, I went with it. Yeah. So.
Yeah. Yeah, pretty good interception against Michigan, huh? Yeah, back of the end zone.
That was a weird play because he almost felt like he could have picked it off, but then he kind of stuck his hand out there and hit it up in the air. Yeah. Anyway, we're kind of getting off.
But again, real quick, I think he had a pick six at Illinois like the very next week. So that was a hell of a run for Danny Fortner. But you're right. Back to the issue at hand.
And this MSU defense, my third takeaway was they've been a little bit lucky. They've recovered all 7 fumbles of their opponents. Some of those are special teams. But not only have they recovered all 7 of their opponents' fumbles, but the offense has recovered both of its own fumbles. Now, fumble recovery pretty much comes down to luck, how the ball bounces, where guys happen to be when the ball comes out. For them to be in that, and Wyoming had a couple of costly turnovers that immediately led to MSU points in this game. And you can't expect that, even though Nebraska had 5 turnovers of their own against MSU last year. And those are some of the absolute worst and lucky turnovers you're ever going to see in a game, whether it's Armstrong fumbling at his own goal line or Westerkamp just straight dropping a punt return.
Which I was happy to see because Jordan Westerkamp never, ever once called me back when he was a high school recruit. So I had a great relationship with his coach. He would text me. I would try to get him on the phone every single time. Yeah, I'll be ready in 5. And I never heard his voice once. And so when I saw that, I said, yeah, that's too bad, kid.
All right. Good anecdote there.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's another little thing about the defense. I know D'Antonio said the defense isn't broken, and I don't think it's broken. I do think the bar has been set incredibly high, but I do also think it should be a concern for MSU, especially this week with Nebraska coming in and what they bring offensively. It's kind of like the Spartan Rocky made a good point. This is kind of like the 2011 defense in that they make a lot of big plays. They also give up a lot of big plays. MSU is, I think, number 4 nationally in turnover margin per game, and they're number 12 in sacks per game, but they've also given up. They're also in the 40s when it comes to rushing defense in yards per rush.
Right.
So it's kind of hit and miss, and when against some better offenses, a miss can mean 6 points. So I think the defense has been a little bit lucky in the sense of those turnovers and the fumbles.
Yeah. That's like an advanced stat that I can get behind, and I do think is very valid when you talk about fumbles recovered or lost being sort of lucky. And I do think that D'Antonio's, I understand what he's saying. He's saying we're still a pretty good defense. There's no need to panic. And he sort of, he made a joke about it. He says, well, I know we gave up a whopping 14 points last night, but the defense is not broke. And he's right. But, I was talking to Shalik Calhoun about that after practice on Tuesday, and he's like, yeah, we did give up 14 points, and that's too many for us. He's like, we don't think we should be giving up any touchdowns. And What do you say? He's like, yeah, you can kick field goals on us. He's like, oh, we don't mind field goals. You can kick field goals on us all day. That's all right. But you don't score touchdowns in our house. So we were really upset about that. So I think, you're right. It is a lot of it's weird to see because last year Narduzzi was always extremely critical of the defense even after they would have historically good performances. And now he's saying, no, everything's fine. And I'm not saying it's a bad defense. It's still a good or above average defense. There's no doubt about that. But we're going to find out Saturday if that's all they are, just an above average defense, or if they're a great defense.
Right. And kind of in the blowouts, I know play into these stats a little bit. But I think the simple idea of the big plays that were there for Wyoming, that were there for Eastern Michigan, that weren't completed, are a story. But there are positives to the blowouts, which you wrote about this week.
Good transition.
Yes.
Oh, sorry. Well, I just screwed up that transition. But yeah, basically, my point in that story was, people always complain about Michigan State not getting their backup quarterbacks enough reps. And there was one columnist in particular who I will not name, who last year and this year was saying, I think MSU's in trouble because Tyler O'Connor, they don't have established guy. They haven't given Tyler O'Connor enough reps, No. But, okay, how many teams in the country feel great about their number 2 quarterback and have given him a ton of game experience? He's like, oh, yeah, he's polished. He's good to go. He's played in meaningful games.
Michigan apparently felt good about theirs.
Oh, Chris. But how much time do we go without a Michigan reference?
We'll hit that whole issue when we get to the.
We'll hit it right on the head. No pun intended. But I'm sorry. But it's like, to me, okay, if you can get your backup quarterback reps, that's a bonus. It's not something you need to do, but if you can do it, then it's great. Michigan State just hasn't had the luxury to be able to do that. You look at the games they were in last year when they're playing South Florida, Western Michigan. These games are not out of hand early. I mean, they need to win these games. And you think back to 2012, it was the same deal. And so when you talk about, well, I'm worried about Tyler O'Connor not having enough reps, what's Michigan State going to do if Connor Cook gets hurt? There was nothing they could do. You don't want to risk losing these games just to put in a backup. But so the fact that they've been able to get all these second, third, and even fourth-string guys work because of the nature of these blowouts, I think that's huge. But it's not as simple as saying, oh, Michigan State didn't get the backups enough work in recent years. Sometimes the games just don't allow it. And these did, and it's a big boost for them down the road.
And their first-team reps, because they've come out and score on the first few drives, that they're able to put Damian Terry and Tyler O'Connor in there with the first team reps, which are even more important. And considering the very first offensive play of the game when Cook got hit, it's, like you said, it's extremely valuable. Now, shifting to this week against Nebraska, before we talk about the Huskers, Damon Knox is back. He's on the depth chart. James Kittredge is on the depth chart. They're both listed as third-string guys at the 2 defensive tackle spots. It doesn't sound like Kittredge could be ready, but D'Antonio reiterated on his radio show that it sounds like Damon Knox is good to go. Is that the sense you're getting?
Yeah, that's what I pressed Burton on exactly what the situation was, and it's basically Knox. Pretty sure he's going to play. Kittredge, I don't know. It sounds to me like Kittredge will not, and I don't know. If they're not sure about Kittredge playing at this point, then it's you might as well just sit him because I don't think he gives you anything if he's not good to go by now. Yeah. Damon Knox, on the other hand, a lot of game experience, and when you talk about stopping a running back like Amir Abdullah, you have to be gap sound, and it's for a defensive lineman. it's just as much mental as physical, and making sure you are disciplined and not trying to overstep something, not trying to do something more than you need to because you're playing this great running back. All you have to do is do your job and play your gap assignment. And if you do that, you're going to be successful. Damon Knox is a guy who has proven he can do that. So I think he helps tremendously, and he just adds depth at that position. But Kittredge probably still a week away. The question is, even when Kittredge is healthy, does he work his way back into the rotation? I mean, I know he was pretty effective 2 years ago. I thought he was a decent player. Last year gets hurt, and this year we didn't see much from the first game. He's, was out of shape for a while. I don't know where he's at now, but he's going to have to fight for reps even when he is back healthy.
Yeah. MSU-Nebraska this weekend, it's at 8 p.m. on ABC. Got the national audience. Last I heard, MSU still had a few hundred tickets left for sale for those of you interested, although you can probably get them cheaper on StubHub. I don't really know who at this point ends up buying them through the school. Although I guess I haven't checked StubHub prices, so you never know.
Well, people over the age of 60 probably.
Yeah.
Don't know what StubHub is.
Yeah. And
pick up your rotary phone and dial the MSU ticket office.
If you haven't, make sure you check out Spartan Rockies previews, which are always, as I say every week, always fantastic. Very in-depth personnel breakdowns and strategy breakdowns. And you can get that with a VIP access to Spartan Tailgate and 24/7 Sports, which there's a deal going on right now with 24/7 where if you pay for 1 month of access, you get 2 extra months free. If you want to try it out and see if you like what you get from the VIP side, you'll also get all the best MSU recruiting news, visit news, and all that stuff there. We try not to give too much of that away here on this podcast because we're giving it away for free. And so I highly recommend you guys get VIP if you haven't yet. I think those who have it would recommend it. So a little plug there for VIP and Spartan Rocky with good stuff. Starting on the side of the ball, the MSU offense, this or Ohio State, Nebraska or Ohio State will probably be the toughest defensive line that MSU will face all year. Oregon might have been up there too, but Nebraska's got some beasts on that line, don't they? You wrote about this.
They're huge, and that's Big Ten football these days. It's not anything totally out of the ordinary, but Nebraska is like really, really big up front. Valentine at nose tackle, God, he goes like 6'4", 330 or something. You got Randy Gregory at 6'6" at defensive end, and I was talking to Brian Allen about that this week. And he's just saying that he needs to play better. Brian Allen is not telling me he's not happy with how he's played thus far, and he knows he needs to be better against Nebraska. And I'm kind of saying, well, is it just is it you're not able to play fast enough because you don't know the schemes? Is it like what exactly are you looking to work on here? And he's just saying, well, a lot of it's just who I'm going against. And you think about it, like Brian Allen last year playing against high school kids, probably At a lot of the time, you're going against a 5'10", 240, 250-pound defensive tackle, and now you got 6'4", 330. So it's a totally different speed and size for these guys, and it's gonna be a challenge. I don't know that Connor Cruz starts or not, but just that he is back and clearly healthy. I mean, he played 20, 30 snaps against Wyoming, whatever it was. I think that's huge. And we're going to learn a lot about this football team kind of across the board on Saturday, and offensive line is no exception.
Yeah, it sounds like Jack Allen should be back after missing last week. He was sorely missed.
Yep.
I think Travis Jackson committed 4 penalties of his own against Wyoming there. If he's back there in the middle and Jackson can slide over, it seems like they've got all the pieces back that they expected this year with Cruz in there now, but they're not all 100%, and they haven't all been working together, especially with Cruz because of these injuries. So it'll be interesting because Nebraska's 23rd in tackles for loss per game on the defensive line. They're only in the 40s when it comes to sacks, but they haven't been great against the run, allowing 3.6 yards per carry, number 51 in the country. So those keeping away those big negative plays will be huge. MSU has only allowed 3 sacks this year. A lot of that, again, though, is garbage time. And tackles for loss allowed, let's see where they're at. They're number 42 in the country.
Well, I think the 3 sacks were all at Oregon.
I was wondering that. I at least one or at least 2 of them are. I think I
thought all 3 sacks were against Oregon. Don't quote me on that.
You might be. I think I wrote that, but so then you can judge that based off the top competition they've played and the not so good competition. That was one thing that MSU did extremely well last year with the healthy offensive line, was keep Connor Cook clean up until the Rose Bowl when he got sacked almost as much in that game as he had been all year.
Right.
So they're going to have to keep Connor Cook clean in this one. But Nebraska's defense, they're not great at the middle linebacker or I believe the safeties, and I think that's where all the jet sweeps are going to come into play when you're moving this defense side to side. I think that's going to be a key for MSU's offense to try to confuse the weak spots in that Nebraska defense. How do you? It's kind of a broad question, but how do you see MSU's offense performing in this game, I guess?
I mean, I think it's going to be they're going to try to have balance like they always do. I don't think Nebraska's defense is the best they'll see this year, and I think that's why I don't want to give too much away here. We haven't gotten to the predictions yet, but that's something I really like about MSU in this matchup is that I think their offense is clicking almost at unprecedented levels right now. And you think back to last year, I mean, they moved the ball pretty well in Nebraska. Obviously, the turnovers helped, but I think the key for them, if Jeremy Langford can pick up 4 or 5 yards of carry and they incorporate maybe a little bit of the end-around stuff, keep them honest, and you got to hold off the defensive line. But I expect them, kind of what they are. We know what they are. They're balanced, and they're going to try to grind away at you with the run and hit some big passes. And I think they'll have a lot of success in this one.
Spartan Rockies had a good stat. No MSU quarterback has hit 50% of their throws against Nebraska because of this coverage.
You're telling me Kirk Cousins didn't hit 50% of his throws in 2011?
Ooh, that was a tough one. But even last year, Cook went 15 for 31, and that was probably the best performance MSU had against Nebraska. The Huskers have been decent pass-wise, but MSU also hasn't been clicking on offense, I don't think, like they have been this year. With the way they can attack the seam routes and all the different route combinations they can use with everybody, I think MSU's passing offense will be what leads the offense in this style. And I remember in that 2011 game, Nebraska said they knew what was coming. I don't think they're going to know what's coming this time around. I think that was part of with what they were showing last week, and I'm sure they've got more. A lot of options for this offense, and I think MSU's going to have a pretty good day on that side of the ball. Defensively, it all starts and stops with Amir Abdullah. Like I mentioned, MSU's been average against the run this year, but the big plays are what add to that. But that's part of the nature of MSU's defense. If you're going to give up big plays, that's going to happen. What do you see keys for MSU's defense to shut down Nebraska? Because Armstrong is not the best, quarterback. Obviously, they're going to be gearing to stop the run.
Yeah, I think he's better. Certainly, I think.
Yeah, he's still only completing 54% of his passes. He's got 10 touchdowns to 3 INTs, but 53% is not good.
No. Especially, you'd think it'd be better with the support he has in the run game. I mean, it's stupid. They run for 354 yards a game, which is just insane. I know they haven't exactly been playing the 85 Bears, but you look at Amir Abdullah, and like I was saying earlier, I talked to Shalik Calhoun about this. It's all about gap control because he can see a hole so quickly, and he's gone. He's got great vision, and he's got the quickness and sort of sees things almost before they develop, which is really the mark of a great player in any sport. And if Michigan State is able to at least slow him down a little bit to where he's not running all over them, I think that they can, have success in the pass rush in those situations. Maybe put him in some third and longs and get Armstrong on his heels a little bit. But there is no question that Amir Abdullah is going to challenge this offense, this defense tremendously. And it's going to be very telling to see what they can do, because if they slow Nebraska down and hold them, again, I set 400 as kind of the benchmark. We'll see how the game plays out. But if they are able to just contain them offensively, I think Michigan State could be a great defense, because I think you have to be a great defense to stop this Nebraska team.
One thing Armstrong does do well is run. He's averaging 8.4 yards per carry this year on 50 carries. I believe that includes sacks. Amir Abdullah is averaging 7.3 per carry. And even Amani Cross averaging 6.6. He had a big touchdown run against MSU last year.
Yeah.
It all comes down to these big plays. Armstrong hit Kenny Bell for a deep touchdown pass on Curtis Drummond last year. So it's just gonna come down to, I think, limiting the big plays on defense and make Nebraska take its time down the field, make Abdullah pick up 4 or 5 yards at a time rather than a 10 and a 12, here and there. And the linebackers against Wyoming, part of the reason the safeties have been so exposed, especially in the running game at times, is because the linebackers haven't been great at getting off their blocks and getting on running plays. When they're not blitzing, when they're defending the run, they haven't done a great job of getting off those blocks, and that's why you've seen some runs getting sprung for 10, 20 yards. And Abdullah's going to be a tough guy to bring down, and it's just a really interesting matchup, because you think it's a running team, you think MSU can stop them, but they haven't. Last year, Nebraska, I think the last 2 years against these top MSU team defenses, I think Nebraska's averaged at around or above 6 yards per play against them. Even last year, I know one of Nebraska's touchdowns came when it was garbage time to make it 28 points, but they still averaged 6 yards per play, and if not for those turnovers, last year's game could look very, very different.
Yeah. Another thing too is I've never and that's why I think we have this dynamic that I can't remember in some time, where both fan bases are just so confident. I really haven't heard much concern from MSU fans about losing to Nebraska. And every Nebraska fan that I've read or heard from or whatever it may be is just completely sure Nebraska is going to roll over Michigan State. They're no good. And even you think even in a Michigan State game back in the day, there's always on either side whether there's some hesitation to go all in some fans, and there's a certain nervousness that comes with that, and thinking, oh man, we could lose to Michigan, or we could lose to Michigan State today. What's that going to do? How are we going to stop this and that? And they're just a mess. But this game going in, it just seems to me that neither fan base is at all worried about the opponent.
And remember, Oregon's offensive coordinator Scott Frost visited Nebraska in the offseason to learn how they attacked MSU's defense, because Nebraska they figured out MSU's defense, and this is probably MSU's worst defense in quite a few years. And that's why it's a really interesting dynamic, and I think it's going to be a shootout. And
We
I
don't
think
know that yet. I think it's too early to say that, though. I
you
mean,
want.
that they're the worst. That it's the worst defense MSU's had in quite a few years.
I don't. I guess I don't even. It's probably. I mean, I wouldn't put it up against last year's. Obviously, 2012
No.
probably the same. It's probably right around there with the 2011 defense.
Yeah.
When things kind of got going, and that was also a young defense, and this is kind of a young defense, and obviously the rest of the season needs to play out. I'm just saying based on what we've seen so far.
Right.
And again, and that's not necessarily a slight because, like we said, they've had some really good defenses the last few years.
Yeah,
This Nebraska team
differently.
This Nebraska team, even with Tommy Armstrong last year, moved the ball against a very good MSU defense, and this is a defense that we don't know if it's that good yet, and so it's perfectly conceivable. I've seen a lot of MSU fans just like like you said, completely confident that they'll be able to shut down Nebraska, and I don't understand why. Because I know Nebraska's 28 points last year were tied for the most MSU gave up in a game, and yes, the one touchdown came at the end when MSU had given up, and that's fine. But they averaged more than 6 yards per play. They figured out how to attack MSU's defense, and there are holes in this. There are questions on this MSU defense, and that's why I think it's going to be a shootout. And the idea of MSU giving up 30-something points is absolutely not out of the realm of possibility.
No, this could be. I mean, this could look like Texas A&M Baylor when it's all done, And because we're talking about that now, it'll probably be 12-9.
As we're talking, Arizona and Utah are in the second quarter, and it's 3-0. So the over/under for that game was in the 80s. So you never know.
There you go.
But
yeah.
But I also think MSU's never had this potent of an offense. So before we get to the game picks, there's a chance of rain. It's supposed to rain. It's like an 80% chance of rain on Saturday throughout the day, but I believe it's supposed to clear up by game time. Just keep that in mind for your tailgates and whatnot. I'll say this. We'll say that if it doesn't rain, I think these offenses are going on all cylinders. If it does rain, I think that will hurt MSU's ability to throw the ball, which I think is its greatest offense.
I agree. I think the rain favors Nebraska.
I do too.
And it also favors local liquor stores as people look to keep warm. And I just want to tell everyone out there, you cannot stock enough Fireball for this weekend. Just don't sell it short because it's going to be 40 degrees and it's going to be freezing cold. And that's what, I love those types of games. And it's easy for me to say that from inside the nice toasty press box with the coffee machine going in the back. But I really do love these types of cold, weird weather games. That to me is what football's all about, and I just can't get enough of the bad weather games.
So we move into the game picks here, and MSU's kind of been out of the spotlight since the Oregon game. They moved after Eastern Michigan. They moved up. They moved up on their bye week in the polls, and they moved down after winning 2 blowout games. MSU's just kind of sitting there right on the outside of those undefeated teams. It's a national spotlight game for them to make an impression. Because I think a lot of people do respect Nebraska. I think a lot more people respect Nebraska nationally than Ohio State. Even though Nebraska, needed to get by McNeese State or whatever, they're 5-0.
That's what totally, yeah. If they didn't have that, I think the perception of Nebraska would be totally different. And, if my aunt had balls, she'd be my uncle. But I do think that game and that one bad performance really changed the way people view this Nebraska team.
Well, I still think they're getting decent respect. I know I've seen quite a few national writers pick them. I think they're kind of becoming a bit of a trendy upset pick. But MSU's favored by about 7. I think it got up to about 10 during the week, but got back down to 7. But there's a ton of huge games this weekend throughout college football. But MSU's got the ABC slot at a night game, so there will be a lot of people watching it. what is your pick for the game? What's your score pick?
I don't have a set number in mind, so I'm going to kill some time here while I come up with one. But I think I
can go. I can go first if you need me to.
No, this will be real quick here. I do think Michigan State. I don't think they cover because I think again this is going to be a game. It sort of to me has the feel of a last team with the ball wins, and I think it's going to be a 3 or 4 point win. Right now, I am going to say Michigan State 38, Nebraska 35. No, that's a lot of points, isn't it?
I know, but my pick I made it earlier today was 42-35.
It's like
it's a lot of points, but it's been
it's a lot of points for Nebraska against a Michigan State defense that's good, but the offense is really good. I don't know.
The last time MSU gave up 30 points, I'm looking this up. I feel like
Oregon.
Right.
Conference play maybe or something.
Yeah. Indiana had 27 in 2012. Yeah, let's look for the last Big Ten game when they gave up that many points. It would have been it would have been Wisconsin in the Big Ten championship. 42 points. So it's been a while since it happened, but part of that is because MSU's had some great defenses over the past few years.
Yeah.
If MSU blows out Nebraska, then then I'm sure it's all on board. Everyone thinks the defense is fixed and it's another great year. But I do think it's fair to question holes. In when you say 35 points, it makes you think they're going to be moving the ball up and down the field. But all it takes, as we saw against Oregon, I know it's Oregon, but when you give up big plays, you can give up a 50-yard touchdown in an instant, and it may not be moving the ball up and down the field, but just a couple missed reads, and you could be, burned for something like that. And that's just the nature of how MSU plays defense. But I got them. It's about by what the spread is 7. I got them 42-35. What's the over/under for this? The over/under for this is
60.
So that would be 30-30. I mean, that'd be 34-20.
Yeah. I wonder when the last time the over/under was that high for a Michigan State game.
That'd be a good thing. Probably.
I'll look that up. It's been a while.
I'm trying to think. Maybe the Big Ten championship game.
I don't think it would have been that many. That was probably high 50s. I remember in 2012, you could not set the over/under low enough for Michigan State. It was unbelievable.
I'm wondering Indiana last year too. Could have been a possibility.
Yeah, I don't think still. That's a 60. You don't really see that.
If not, I would say the Big Ten championship game again against Wisconsin.
I don't think it would have been that high because I think that those are two good defenses. But anyways, we'll look it up.
In 2011, you don't think so?
No, I don't think it would have been. I think 60 is a lot for an over/under.
After what they had done in East Lansing, though.
Yeah, I think that was probably lower than that. I'm gonna look it up at some point here, and we'll figure it out.
Yeah, we can keep stalling with our conversation here while you try to figure it out. I don't know, but so that's our picks. You've got MSU 38-35. I got them 42-35. I think it'll be a true coming out moment nationally for Connor Cook and MSU's offense. Cook's number 3 nationally in pass efficiency. And he's much better than Devin Gardner when it comes to quarterbacking. But I think it'll be a coming out party for this MSU offense, while at the same time people will say, whoa, what's up with this MSU defense? Because it's not the same MSU football team they're expecting. I think people gave MSU the benefit of the doubt still after Oregon because it's Oregon and because they had shut them down for a period of time there. So moving to Big Ten picks here. Got 6 conference games. 5 of them interconference games. We'll only touch on some of them. How's this? I didn't realize this. MSU-Nebraska over-under is 60. The Purdue-Illinois over-under is 57.
Yeah, yeah.
How do you not pound the under with that?
Uh, I, I don't know. I mean, Illinois' defense sucks too. I mean, maybe Purdue could put up that, something. I don't know. It sure looks like the under, but anytime Illinois is involved right now, there's
And
gonna be a
yeah,
lot of points scored. There's gonna be some blood.
and you got Ohio State Maryland over under is 59. That's an interesting game. Maryland comes into that at 4-1, with the only loss being on the last second field goal to West Virginia.
Hmm.
Ohio State comes in 3-1. Their last two games, they've looked like they've figured things out on offense, but it's kind of how they always look on offense when it comes to these lower level teams. I like how JT Barrett and Kenny Guyton have a bunch of the Ohio State passing records over the last few years
Yeah.
because of these blowout games. But Ohio State's favored by 8 in that one. Um, I guess I believe that Ohio State's got their offense on track when it comes to JT Barrett. I know Cincinnati and Kent State aren't any good defenses, but I don't think there's too much chance of an upset in that one. I think Ohio State takes care of them pretty well. What do you think? Ohio State, Maryland.
Okay, I just kind of tuned out for a second because I was looking for the Michigan
Yeah,
State
no, it's
Wisconsin over under.
Ohio State, Maryland. Ohio State's favored by 8.
Yeah. I do like Ohio State in that game, and I think Maryland is better than people think. And I know I haven't.
Maryland's only allowing 19.8 points per game this year.
Yeah, I like the under in that game a lot because I think that's too many points. But um, I don't know. It's a I do think Ohio State. This will give us a much better indication of where they're at. If they go and beat
Yeah.
Maryland by 14 points, 21 points, and yeah, they're for real, and they're a really really good team. If they go out and it's not, Maryland kind of pushes them around, then they're still a team searching for an identity. Um, right now, I think it's somewhere in the middle. I think Ohio State wins by 10. But it'd be fun to see Maryland win this one.
Quarterback C.J. Brown apparently is a game time decision based on what I'm reading here. He's been banged up. That'll be interesting. He's a guy who can run it and throw it. Be interesting to see how that works. I think Ohio State will take care of him pretty handily.
Yeah.
So we mentioned last week that Penn State being favored by Northwestern over Northwestern by like 7 or 10 points. We were like, whoa, that's not a lot. I figured it'd be a lot more. Maybe Vegas knows and will stay away from that. And lo and behold, Northwestern goes out and wins 29-6 at Penn State in a shockingly dominating fashion. Now Northwestern's got life again, and they're thinking postseason, but they've got Wisconsin.
That's always dangerous for Northwestern, whether it's on the basketball court or the.
Yeah.
Now
they've got Wisconsin coming to town, and Wisconsin is one of the strangest teams in the whole dang country.
I think they're good. I think they're better than a lot of people think.
I don't know what the hell to think of them because they beat USF 27-10, and they beat Western Illinois 37-3, and both those games were like tied or really close at halftime. And in between,
they're a second half team.
And in between those games, they put up 68 points and a Big Ten rushing record against Bowling Green. And then you look at
a good MAC team.
And then you look at LSU, what they did in the first half compared to the second half. This Wisconsin team, they can be really good or they can be really bad. And I don't know how you would know what Wisconsin team is supposed to show up in this. Wisconsin's favored by 9. It's at Northwestern. I would take Wisconsin because just history will tell you they'll just run up and down on them and kill them on the ground against these lower, less strong Big Ten teams. But when South Florida holds Melvin Gordon down, I don't know what to make of this team. And I picked Iowa to win the Big Ten West way back when we started this.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry.
So I guess I don't know what to make of them. They went out and won at Pitt, and then that Pitt lost to Akron. It's such a weird season. I don't know. right now I think Nebraska looks head and shoulders above everybody else in the Big Ten West, but that can change in an instant with the way the season's going. But I think Wisconsin -9 against Northwestern. I think they take care of them there. What do you think?
Yeah, I do too. But which is why, like we said last week when it was Northwestern Penn State, we said, boy, that looks a little funky. I wouldn't touch it because I don't know why it's so low. I guess I can't. I guess I understand why this is only Wisconsin -9 for all those things you mentioned. Just to me, I've learned not to doubt Wisconsin football.
I do, but this year, every time I start believing in them, they go out and lay a performance like they did against Western Illinois USF, and then when you count them out, they put up 68 points on Bowling Green, and so, ooh.
I know. I think Wisconsin's a good football team. I think they are. I still think they could. They're right there with Nebraska and Ohio State. I think those three teams are sort of arm wrestling for the top spot behind Michigan State, and I think it's close between all three of them. So I mean, what do you think?
Yeah.
You don't think
I don't think they can win a big game with Tanner McAvoy under center, passing the ball. Joel Stavey is apparently going to be the number 2 in this weekend. He says he's over the yips, so who knows how things will play out. But
let me tell you something, Chris. You're never over the yips. the yips are there for good, and that's why I cannot hit a 60-degree wedge to save my life because I have the yips with that club. It used to be the best club in my golf bag. I pured it 100 yards every time, right on target, and now I can't do anything with it. So I don't. If a quarterback has to sit out practice and can't play because he says he's got a weird mental block, then I don't know how you trust that guy in a game from here on out. But I don't know. I'm trashing Wisconsin just left and right, and yet continuing to say I think they're a really good team. So,
how is your research coming?
Yeah, it's going.
Have you found anything close to an over under 60 points?
Oh, that research, yes, I did get it. So Michigan State, the over-under for the championship game was 54.5.
Which one?
The Wisconsin game in 2011.
Really? Huh.
Yep. And I haven't found.
Is that the highest one you've found?
No, well, I was looking for that game specifically because that's the one we were talking about. I haven't found an easy way to look at all the past over-unders kind of in order.
I know those sites you can look at those. I don't remember what they are.
Yeah, I can look up any specific game you want.
The point is this is one of, if not the highest over-under MSU's had in quite some time.
Correct. I'm going to do a story on that tomorrow. I'm going to try to find all of them.
There you go.
Say it's the biggest over-under since when. So thank you, Chris. You've done my job for me once again.
And the last Big Ten pick kind of goes into one off-topic thing I wanted to talk about, and that was the situation at Michigan. Every week you don't think it can get worse, and it gets worse. They are 2-3. Before we talk about other stuff going on, your thoughts on the game? They're 2-3, going at 4-1 Rutgers. Line was Michigan -1 to start. It quickly went over to Rutgers -2. I think this is going to be an ugly one. I picked this earlier on Coaching Search. I don't remember what the score was. I picked Michigan. My score was, let's see, here it is. I picked Michigan 20-17. I picked them last week. I picked them last week against Minnesota 17-10. I was wrong there, so maybe I'll just keep being wrong about them. But Gary Nova threw 5 picks against Penn State. I still think this Michigan defense is pretty good, but the offense is unbelievable. But you keep thinking that they're going to pull a performance out of their ass one of these days and win one. Thoughts on Rutgers -2 at home against Michigan?
Well, I mean, I like you said, I thought Michigan would turn it around last week. I thought, well, they've hit rock bottom with the loss to Utah.
I know. You keep thinking they hit rock bottom, and it just keeps getting deeper.
Yeah, okay. But this has to be. I'm serious this time. Like, this is really, really rock bottom, right? And we'll get to that in a minute, like you said. But, no, I like Rutgers because I think their defense is really undervalued. I think Rutgers can play good defense, and I think that's just going to give, I don't see Michigan moving the ball against what I consider to be a decent defense
It's
at this
hard to
point.
see it. Yep.
And Michigan's defense, like you said, very good. Maybe not quite as good as they could be. And I think that, to me, this over under 46.5. I would take the under at like 26.5. I think this is going to be a really ugly game. Like, kind of, maybe that people say, that Rutgers Penn State game was ugly. I thought that was a good game. I thought there was a lot of. I thought it was good too. And I thought.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. All right, I'll take this one. But yeah, I mean, I saw people making fun of it on Twitter, like Mark Snyder and who's the guy that you tweet back and forth with, Ace, whatever.
Oh, Ace from Engelblog, yeah.
Yeah, I got in an argument with him about Keith Appling and 3-point percentage one time and whatever. But those guys, yeah, everyone's talking about how ugly that game was, and it was like a joke. And I was like, I saw two defenses playing very well. And I'm sorry that you're not, scoring touchdowns every 2 seconds. But I loved that game. I thought there was the home crowd aspect of it, and if Rutgers quarterback, if Nova doesn't totally blow it with 5 picks, Rutgers wins that game handily because of its defense, which really shut down Christian Hackenberg. And I thought that was a fun, hard-hitting game. And you kids with your iPads and your Uber cab rides and your text messages who want nothing but 45 points, and I'm looking at you guys. Screw you. I liked that game. I enjoyed it.
I did think it was. I thought it was strangely enjoyable. I've been watching thinking, why am I enjoying this game that's 10-3? But part of that was because of a surprisingly very electric atmosphere at Rutgers.
I wasn't surprised by that. You remember when Shiano had them going for a while there.
But that Penn State game was their first sellout in. I think it was like their third or fourth sellout like ever.
Is that right?
Yeah, and it was very surprising, and they from the start, even especially it being a boring game, I was surprised at how electric that crowd was every single drive. I think part of that is because Rutgers, as I've discovered, has an unbelievable hatred for Penn State because of the New Jersey recruits that they take, and that rivalry has continued since that game ended. And
it's sort of just like the East Coast thing.
It's incredibly fun to watch from the outside, I will say. So I'm curious what kind of atmosphere they're going to have. I will say, though, it's apparently supposed to rain there, too, all night. That could affect things and make things even uglier than they could be.
Yeah.
But credit to Rutgers for having an electric atmosphere against Penn State. I expect the same this week against Michigan. It's a BTN game. It should be fun.
Yeah, I like Rutgers to cover. They're favored by 2. I like them to win. And I got into an argument with one of my friends today who was saying that Rutgers stinks. And I was, saying, no, I think Rutgers could be good. And I was going to make him a bet on, like, how, I was going to set an over-under for Rutgers wins for the rest of the year and say, they win 2 or 3 more games or whatever. And then I looked at their schedule. It is brutal.
Yeah, well, them in Maryland, when you come into the Big Ten, like Nebraska got, when you come into the Big Ten, they're going to feed you to all the top teams.
I know, but, like, that's not, it was like, I was ready to make an outlandish bet, and then I look at it, and it's Michigan at Ohio State, at Nebraska, Wisconsin at home, Indiana at home, at Michigan State, at Maryland, and I'm like, holy shit, they might win. To say they win 2 games is a stretch. I mean, those are all really tough games, and I think they're a good team.
And they've already won 4 games, and they won at Navy, and they won at Washington State. Well, in Seattle, which I think are 2 solid wins there. So if they get to a bowl game this year, I think it's a hell of a job by Kyle Flood there, the head coach.
I'm giving like the Indianas and some of these teams too much credit. They'll beat Indiana at home. Indiana's not that good.
Those teams, when you get to the bottom, anybody can beat anybody. But, Rutgers, get on the Rutgers train while you still can.
Hop on with the Knights.
So before we get to reader questions to wrap things up, I know we're running a little bit long here on the podcast, so if you're still here, thanks for being around. We got some extra stuff to talk about this weekend. Big Ten play starting, so a lot more fun. And I know this is only getting out on Friday. We typically want to do these on Wednesday, so you guys have 2 days to listen to them. But Dan was moving, so we kind of had some things to work around. But the national story of the week, which absolutely did not need to be a story of the week, has been Michigan's handling of Shane Morris's concussion and the handling of it. This could have been a story that wrapped up with Hoke's Monday press conference.
Yep.
Shane Morris gets hit in the head, wobbly. Everybody watching TV is calling for him to come off. He stays in for one more play, which is a pass. They finally pull him, which draws the biggest cheer of the day, the fact that he didn't die out there. And then Devin Gardner loses his helmet. Third-string quarterback's not ready. Morris goes back in there for a handoff, and he comes back out. Brady Hoke came under a lot of criticism for how that was handled, and rightfully so. I think it all comes back to the head coach, and program-wise, it's on him, and that's fine. I thought that criticism was fair. But then that's when things got weird. Michigan releases a statement Sunday talking about Morris's leg injury. He had been wobbling for much of the game. They don't even mention his head injury. Then Hoke comes out on Monday, says he doesn't believe Morris was concussed. He would have been practicing Sunday if not for his leg injury. Okay, well, maybe it wasn't as bad as we thought it was. Okay. And he says a statement's coming out after the press conference from the medical team. Not until 12 hours later at 1 in the morning, Dave Brandon himself releases a statement. Says Shane Morris was diagnosed with a concussion on Sunday and that he had talked to everybody involved. So now it's like, whoa, how did Hoke not know this? What's going on? After statements continuing to get released after 5 p.m., the student-athlete committee released one at midnight the other day, just absolutely fumbling this PR situation. Thursday, Dave Brandon does one-on-one interviews with all of the local media, and we finally get the holes filled. Although Michigan embargoed those interviews until 5 p.m., which is a very convenient time when nobody's reading the news, and then the Tiger game is starting, so nobody can see it. Just another PR, don't know what you're doing. But anyway, turns out apparently Morris was diagnosed with a concussion on Sunday, and nobody knew until Monday. Hoke didn't know when he went out for his press conference. Brandon didn't know until Monday. So Brandon basically put it on the medical team, in which case, if not for Morris's leg injury, was he going to practice on Sunday? When was Hope going to be informed about this concussion? It was every day. It was the lead story. It was on CNN. It was on Good Morning America, and just absolutely the wrong way to handle this from a PR standpoint. I mean, I had a minor specialization in PR at MSU, and just every day with the way that we're handling it was just so confusing. What's your takeaway from this whole situation?
Oh my God, I could seriously talk for like 2 hours straight right now. But
I know, I will say a lot of PR classes teachers got a lot of content to work with their classes now for the next few weeks.
Like, for supposedly being smart people, just so dumb. Like, just continual mistake after mistake after mistake. And I'm gonna go back here to what happened on game day. Okay, to me, I don't have a problem with Shane Morris being in the game up until he goes back in when Devin Gardner's helmet comes off. I understand him being in the game after that hit for one more play, because there's a lot going on. I mean, all these people saying, well, clearly there's a circus going on the sideline because they don't know what's happening. Show me an organized college football sideline. I mean, it is like an Oliver Stone movie out there. It's just chaos. every Saturday. So I get that they don't take him out after that one hit. I can buy that they did not see him as as needing to be removed from the game for one more play. I get that. It's not right. That doesn't make it right. I just understand the human element of being on the sideline and how hectic things can get. But there is absolutely no reason he should go in for that play where Devin Gardner loses his helmet. And what Brady Hoke said on Sunday night was that he was told by someone, it's unclear who, he was told Morris was able to go back into the game, and so he put him back in. And if that's true, assuming Brady Hoke is not flat out lying here, then that is totally on whoever told him to go, that he was able to go back in the game. Because even if, I understand you're just going to hand it off, you just need one play from the guy. What if you fumble the snap? What if there's an error there, and all of a sudden Morris is diving after it, and there's 1,200 pounds of gopher piling on his helmet all of a sudden? That could be a absolutely disastrous event for Shane Morris in terms of his long-term health. So that play should never have happened, and that's on whoever put him back in the game. I do think, though, with the ankle, when he was like limping and stuff, at that point, the criticism was a little over the top, because no one seems, I didn't hear any criticism when Byron Leftwich was being carried to the line of scrimmage by his offensive line in that one game. I mean, things happen on the football field, and if it's an ankle, you're not going to take everyone off who seems to be favoring something. So that one play where he goes back in with the helmet with Devin Gardner is the only concern in my mind. There should have been a timeout taken, and they should have gotten the third stringer in the game for one play. After that, my God, I mean, how dumb are these people?
And that's why it could have been a 1-2 day story, and it's done. And
exactly,
for nobody to know anything, and did Brandon did not ask? I mean, it seemed very clear that it was a possibility. I have to imagine at some point they figured he would be tested. Did no one think to ask? They had practice on Sunday.
Yeah, there's gonna be a fascinating 30 for 30 someday.
It's just everything you could literally everything you could possibly do wrong from a public relations standpoint went wrong. Mistakes happen. They happen. Then you have press conferences where you're sort of lying, but really just completely uninformed. Then you have more press conferences where you're uninformed. Then you have statements released at 1 in the morning contradicting everything that has been said prior. You have statements being released at 5, 6 p.m. You have media interviews being embargoed until 5 p.m. It's like they don't understand how the world works anymore. Like they released so many statements and comments, but they tried to do them at times when no one would know about them. It's like, we want to make it clear that we're getting our story straight, but we wanted to do it at times when people are least likely to see it. It's just like, that's not at all how you handle this. And it took until Thursday for Dave Brandon, and the guy who answered questions at the hiring of offensive coordinator Doug Nussmeier's press conference, and who has always been willing to talk to the media all the time. It took until Thursday for him to get in front of media and talk. And if Brandon had done this on Monday, even Tuesday, you can put it all to bed. Here we are, Thursday going on to Friday, and it's still a story, even though he tried to hide it under the Tigers game. Just absolute with the way they've handled things previously, from a public relations standpoint. When you look at what happened with Gibbons and with Brendan Gibbons and that whole situation, just from a strictly PR standpoint, it was absolutely mind-boggling how this was handled. And when you've got the AD throwing the coach under the bus, not informing him, then throwing the coach under the bus, then 3 days later saying, no, never mind, it's not the coach's fault, it's the medical team's fault. Like, if Hoke doesn't come back next year, how does Dave Brandon sell the administrative standpoint to a new coach? You look at why MSU has been so successful, because you've got an athletic director, a university, and a coach all in step together, something MSU has rarely ever had, and it's a circus over there at Michigan right now. And if they do end up making a coaching change and Dave Brandon does end up staying as an athletic director, I don't know how you try to sell yourself to a guy like Jim Harbaugh, who's already having a power struggle of his own in San Francisco.
Yeah, you're not going to get a Harbaugh, and to me, Dave Brandon should be fired immediately. Brady Hoke should be allowed to finish the season, because I don't think what happened is certainly he bears some of the responsibility, like a lot of people do. He has his fair share, and he's the head coach, so ultimately most of it does fall on him. But having said that, I mean, Michigan would be better off hiring a bartender from Scorekeepers in Ann Arbor to run their PR. I mean, what a waste of money to be paying these guys hundreds of thousands of dollars to just make things worse and continue to pile on. And I just don't understand why. You send Brady Hoke out there on Monday. I don't know what he's told. I don't know what they expect. But they either should have had Dave Brandon available that day, they should have had medical staff available that day, or they should have just canceled the press conference and said, you know what, we're still sorting things out. I'm sorry, it's canceled, and we'll do it on Wednesday. Because what they did is absolute incompetence across the board for guys who are being paid a lot of money to help the university, and all they're doing is digging the hole as deep as it can possibly go. I mean, how dumb can you be the way that they've handled it? And I do feel bad for Brady Hoke. I think Dave Brandon absolutely threw him out to the wolves, and that's why Dave Brandon was the CEO of a company like Domino's. I mean, you can't become a man in charge like that without doing what's best for business and thinking you can get away with it. And he thought he could, thought he could get away with it. I don't know, but you can't do that in this day and age. And just the stupidity and incompetence is mind-boggling. And Michigan, I'm gonna make an offer right now. In Michigan, you give me $100,000 a year, I will just go in there and tell you, no, you don't want to send a plane to write Go Blue over Spartan Stadium. That's not going to look good. You don't want to.
Well, and they also denied it. They denied. That's another one. They denied that they did that until the company sold them out and said, no, yeah, they did. That's why it became an even bigger PR thing. Keep going.
It's unbelievable. And the people, I was listening to Detroit Sports Talk on Monday morning, and these people, this has nothing to do with on-field performance. I don't care about wins and losses. Brady Hoke should be fired today because I'm worried about the safety of our athletes. Bullshit. If they were 4-0 right now, you're telling me you would care? No. If they were 4-0 right now, Michigan fans would be coming after the broadcasters for making too big of a deal out of it. That's who they would be blaming. They'd be blaming the broadcasters who rightfully pointed out when Shane Morris went back in for the play when Devin Gardner lost his helmet. That's who they would be blaming right now. And instead, they're taking this moral high ground and expect us to believe that it has nothing to do with wins and losses. Bullshit. It's entirely because you're fed up with your football program and you finally had an out. You finally had an excuse to say, well, this is enough, and we finally have grounds to fire you. No, bullshit. That is not true. You are mad about this because your football team is bad, and because, and now because your PR team, who I would like to point out again, is being paid very handsomely to make your university look horrible. It's unbelievable. I could go on and on, but I should probably stop.
Fired up about this.
Because they should. It doesn't make sense.
As a member of just the media, I was just offended at how they were handling this.
I know.
To release that statement at 12:52 in the morning and to contradict everything previously, and for Brandon not to get in front of a camera until Thursday, just in saying he had more important things to do, which was communicating with his athletes. It's just he hung everybody out to dry while dragging everybody down. This should have been done with on Monday. Made mistakes happen. We didn't know. We learn from it. By Wednesday, people are done talking about it. Now we're talking about how they've handled it and just the management of it all. And I know this is an MSU podcast, and it doesn't have to do with Michigan. It just has to do with media in today's news world and how you think you can handle things. And if it was Ohio State, we'd be talking about the same thing. It's just unbelievable how this lasted for almost an entire week, and it'll be a story going into the game on Saturday. And not only are people talking about how terrible Michigan has been on the field this year, now they're talking about how terrible they've been off the field, and it's just everything's looking bad for them. Like we said, every time we think they've hit rock bottom, they dig themselves deeper. Every single day this week, they dug themselves deeper. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. I know we've been going for a little long here. We'll finish this off with a couple reader questions. We already answered one, so I guess we only got one here then. From at Detroit Spartan, he says I'll reword it, but he says rank the 8 Big Ten games in order of difficulty. He says Nebraska, OSU, Maryland, Penn State, Indiana, blah blah blah. So let me reword it this way. Do you think this game or the Ohio State game is more difficult? I will say this. The Ohio State game is far more important. This MSU-Nebraska game is only relevant sort of to the college football playoff picture, because if MSU loses to Nebraska, they can still win out their Big Ten games and win the Big Ten East and then win the Big Ten championship game. So I will say credit to one thing nice about the playoffs is that it does make these interdivisional games more meaningful. But between Nebraska and Ohio State, which one do you think is more difficult? Initially we thought Ohio State, then Braxton Miller gets hurt. But now Ohio State's looking better. I think it's a close call, but I will say I think this Nebraska game is, at least right now I feel, it's the most difficult game remaining on the schedule.
Yeah, I agree. I think maybe Ohio State is a better team than Nebraska. I don't know that for sure, but I think this is certainly a tougher matchup for Michigan State when you look at the offensive weapons that Nebraska has. And I just think that, Amir Abdullah, if you're able to run on this Michigan State defense, then that's the key to success. And not many teams have been able to do it over the years. Ohio State hasn't had a ton of success recently, and so I think this is the toughest. I don't know if it's the best. I don't know if it's the toughest team they'll play for the rest of the year, but I think it's definitely the toughest matchup. And so if Michigan State comes out of here with a win, whether it's by a field goal or 2 touchdowns, then they should feel pretty good about their chances to run the table, because I do think this is the toughest remaining matchup.
Yeah, I'm with you there. So that's going to wrap things up here. As always, send us questions either in the thread or on Twitter at Chris Vanini or at MSUDanK. Any questions you want us to answer, any questions about the podcast in general, tips, suggestions, anything you want to ask us. MSU-Nebraska, 8 o'clock ABC. That's probably going to wrap things up here. We will talk to you next week, hopefully more toward the middle of the week. Once again, if you haven't,
should be good to go.
Sign up for Spartan Tailgate VIP if you haven't. Highly recommend that. Buy 1 month, get 2 months free. And with that, I guess that'll do it here. We'll talk to you guys next week. Thanks for sticking through us to the end here if you have. For Dan Kilbridge, I am Chris Vanini, and we will talk to you guys later.
See ya.